I believe in Jesus, by the way. We'll talk about that.
Oh.
I'm reading Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. It's convincing evidence.
What do you think? I throw people out of the club here? We believe in whatever you want.
I didn't. I went to Catholic school my whole life, but after reading this book, Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, the factual evidence that he existed is kind of overwhelming.
I'd like to see that because the factual evidence that he existed has always been underwhelming. In fact, it's always...
Read Case for Christ.
Yeah,
Give it a shot by Lee Strobel.
This is based on what? Archaeological finds?
Archaeological finds.
New ones?
Theological finds. Ivy League.
What are theological finds?
Bill, ready for this?
Yeah.
If I told you, okay, if I told you factual evidence about Alexander the Great, you would believe me.
Okay, but even still, it's a silly point because who cares if Jesus lived? It's whether he's then died and was reborn and is up in heaven with his Father, who's really him. Okay, that's the part where the rubber meets the road. Maybe he existed. I agree. That's absolutely possible. He may have existed.
But according to Case for Christ, independent sources who didn't know each other, who wrote about him within 20 years of his death, talked about these miracles happening as in real time.
Okay.
In Club Random Podcast, where comedy and intellect often clash, Bill Maher and Chris Distefano embark on a fiery debate that transcends humor and dives into the heart of faith, history, and skepticism. The topic at hand: the existence of Jesus Christ, a figure whose influence shaped millennia of belief, but whose historical reality remains shrouded in contention. Chris takes the stage first, his voice steady but impassioned, brandishing Lee Strobel's The Case for Christ as his weapon of choice. To him, this book is not just a collection of arguments. It is a revelation of compelling historical and theological evidence that bridges the gap between faith and fact. He paints a picture of ancient sources, independent witnesses, and a narrative that, to his mind, holds overwhelming credibility. Bill, ever the skeptic and unflinching in his pursuit of truth, counters with razor-sharp wit and a penetrating gaze. For him, the evidence Chris so passionately defends is no more than a collection of stories, crafted decades after Jesus' supposed life, stitched together by followers with agendas, and lacking the rigor of historical scrutiny. Bill challenges the reliability of the sources, noting the time gaps and the oral tradition's susceptibility to distortion. His skepticism cuts deeper as he points out the theological underpinnings of these texts, suggesting that faith, not fact, has kept them alive. What begins as a light-hearted discussion quickly becomes a battleground of ideologies. It's a clash not just of ideas but of worldviews, where each man wrestles with the tension between belief and evidence, tradition and skepticism, the known and the unknown. Let's watch the video.
Well, again...
And Alexander the Great's biographers, the earliest one was like 100 years after he died.
Chris, I'm going to have to burst your bubble now because here's I have to spit a couple of facts at you that are kind of going to under... Okay.
It's Hollywood.
There's only two sources in the Bible. Okay. There's the four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Okay. There's also another guy, Josephus, who wasn't accepted, but read the Case for Christ.
Not in the Bible.
Okay.
But the Bible is itself an anthology. They found some few decades ago the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were other books that were just basically edited out. So right away we know a person decided what constituted the Bible, and just some stuff wound up on the cutting room floor.
I get it. Council of Nicaea. I get it.
Council of Nicaea, yes.
325 AD. Yes. That's when they decided the Christian religion. I agree with you.
Right.
I'm with you on that.
I remember that.
But I'm telling you, read this book.
That's Emperor Constantine.
Shout out Constantine, Turkey, all that.
Well, the first one...
Constantinople.
The first one to change the Roman Empire to a Christian empire.
They decided all the holidays.
Took 3 centuries.
I get it. And listen, Bill, I'm with you on that.
But here's the important point.
Let's do it.
The debate over the historical existence of Jesus as encapsulated in this content highlights the enduring tension between faith-based claims and scholarly skepticism. Advocates for Jesus' existence, like those who reference Lee Strobel's The Case for Christ, argue that there is substantial historical and theological evidence to support the claim. Strobel's book draws on sources such as archaeological findings, independent accounts, and the Gospels to build a case for Jesus as a real historical figure. However, this perspective is met with strong opposition from skeptics who challenge the reliability of these sources. Critics argue that much of the evidence originates from religious texts written decades after Jesus' purported life, raising questions about their authenticity and objectivity. This gap in time and the reliance on oral traditions are seen as vulnerabilities, suggesting that the narratives may have been altered or embellished to serve theological agendas. The debate, therefore, becomes not just about whether Jesus existed, but about the methods and criteria used to evaluate historical claims. This clash underscores a broader conflict between belief systems rooted in faith and those that prioritize empirical evidence and historical rigor.
Okay. Bill, yes, but
the other
I want to make you let your point, but let me just quickly. The game of telephone, yes, I agree with you that point, but the game of telephone in Jesus' times, according to Lee Strobel in the case of Christ, was the simple fact of we're playing the game of telephone. There's 10 people here. The game of telephone, as we know it today, is you say something in my ear and then it goes around 10 times, and by the time it gets to you, it's something radically different. This game of telephone, this ancient game of telephone was, but you tell it to me, then the third guy confirms what you said before it goes to the fourth guy. So there's a level of checking, checks and balances.
Chris, you're working too hard. If you want to believe this shit, believe it. You don't have to convince me or
I'm just convincing you of case for Christ.
Or construct this scaffolding to which you hang this belief. Just believe it. It's all good.
Okay.
Don't
come to me, and when you die at St. Peter's, I'm not getting you in.
But you know, I can't go there with you. It's just, it's silly.
I'm just saying it's nice the idea to believe in something. I'm just trying.
Their dialogue spirals into a passionate exchange, Chris defending the chain of evidence with arguments of ancient checks and balances, while Bill dismisses it as a glorified game of telephone, where stories evolve and warp with every retelling. For Chris, belief in the existence of Jesus is bolstered by the convergence of accounts, even if rooted in faith. For Bill, the question isn't just whether Jesus existed, but whether the stories of miracles, resurrection, and divinity can withstand the cold light of reason.
Is the other source of the Bible.
Yes.
There's Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. I said the two names out of order because that's the order in the Bible. The first gospel, Mark, is 70 AD. Jesus dies in 33. So that's 40 years almost after he died.
Okay.
So not contemporaries. Paul comes before the gospel writers. He's writing around the year 50, in the 50s.
Okay.
So he's much closer to Jesus's time. So you'd think he would know more about Jesus than the people who came later, but actually St. Paul knows almost nothing about Jesus. He barely conceives of him as as a person who lived on earth. There's no details about his life like they are in the Gospels. So the people who came later know more than the person who wrote earlier. Just some food for thought.
But, okay, I understand. But he does acknowledge at some point, right? Paul, aka Saul, knows that Jesus existed, right? He talks about him.
He talks about, I'm saying he conceives him as a Godhead. He doesn't have this, it's not the narrative that's in the Gospels of Jesus went around and he did miracles and he did stuff and everybody loved him and he gets quoted a lot. He makes speeches, blessed are the meek. He has adventures. He goes into the desert. It's a whole thing.
But what about...
And then at the end, it's a whole drama with, he's crucified. Oh, no. Paul doesn't know any of this. All the stuff that the gospel writers obsess about and that are his biography. It's a little strange.
But Paul, it's okay for Paul to be somebody who there was a lot of people who didn't like Jesus.
You know what's okay?
And that's okay.
What's okay is that some people believe and other people don't. That's what's okay. It's like, that's you.
Yeah.
And
I'm not trying to put it on you. I'm just saying what I believe.
I know.
The tension between personal belief and scholarly consensus in the debate over Jesus' existence underscores the nuanced interplay between faith and evidence. Belief in Jesus' existence and divinity often transcends the boundaries of historical inquiry, rooted deeply in personal conviction and religious faith. For many, the question of whether Jesus lived is less about empirical evidence and more about the transformative power of his teachings and their role in shaping individual and communal identities. This perspective highlights the deeply personal nature of faith, which does not rely on the stringent criteria of historical validation. Conversely, scholarly consensus approaches the question through the lens of evidence, emphasizing the importance of contemporaneous sources and critical analysis. While these methodologies often conflict, the discussion also acknowledges the need for mutual respect between these perspectives. It underscores the value of personal conviction, while also advocating for open dialogue and the acceptance of differing beliefs. This balance reflects the broader societal challenge of navigating the coexistence of faith-based worldviews and evidence-driven inquiry, fostering an environment where both can be explored without diminishing the other. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more thought-provoking content, don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for being part of our community,